caught myself laughing at something he said, and when our eyes met for a moment too long, I felt something shift deep inside me. I told myself it was just wine and nostalgia. After all, this was Marcus, my husband's best friend. But then the room started spinning slightly, the edges of everything softening. I hadn't realized how tired I was until I nearly dropped a glass. Marcus caught it and looked at me with concern. "You okay?" he asked, and I nodded, but my legs wobbled a little as I tried to walk away. That's when he said, "Come on, let me help you." His arm slid gently around my back, and I didn't protest. I should have protested. He guided me down the hallway toward the guest bedroom, but my steps slowed in front of the master. The door was cracked, and inside, I could hear the faint hum of David's voice, talking on the phone. I paused. It was late. Who could he be talking to at this hour? I stood there, trying to make out the words. Marcus glanced at me, then at the door, but said nothing. I don't remember who moved first, but somehow, we ended up in the guest room. He helped me sit, then pulled the blanket over my legs. His hand brushed against mine, and neither of us pulled away. There was tension in the air, thick and unspoken. For a few seconds, it felt like the whole world had gone quiet. Then he whispered, "You deserve more than this," and the words hit harder than I expected. I laid there, eyes wide open, heart racing. He stayed for a moment longer, just standing there in the dim light, watching me as if waiting for a signal I didn't know how to give. Or maybe I had already given it without realizing. And then, something happened that would change everything between the three of us. But I didn't sleep that night. Not because of what happened, but because of what it meant. Because when morning came, I knew I couldn't pretend nothing had changed. And that was just the beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the room like nothing had happened. The birds chirped outside as if the world was still innocent, untouched. But I wasn't. I sat up slowly, still wrapped in the blanket Marcus had laid over me. The guest room felt colder somehow, like it had absorbed the tension from the night before. I didn't even remember falling asleep, but I must have drifted off at some point, because I was still fully dressed, my hair slightly messy from the pillow. I could hear sounds coming from the kitchen, coffee brewing, cabinets closing. David was already up. Just like every other day. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, trying to decide how to walk back into my own life. There was no clear line between right and wrong anymore. Just a blur of emotions I hadn't been ready to face. When I finally stepped out, I saw Marcus sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like he hadn't just turned my world upside down. He looked up, gave me a small smile. I nodded, said nothing. David was in the kitchen, back turned, pouring coffee. "Morning," he said casually, like the night hadn't happened for him at all. I looked between them, my husband and his best friend, and suddenly felt like a stranger in my own home. Over breakfast, the three of us pretended everything was fine. Small talk about weather, about work. Marcus mentioned he had to leave soon, something about a meeting across town. I watched David carefully, no signs of suspicion. No indication he had noticed anything off the night before. He was as distant as ever, phone lighting up beside his plate with a text he didn't bother to hide. That moment stayed with me. The way he smiled at the screen, not at me. The way he seemed more interested in that glowing rectangle than the woman sitting across from him. And I realized something important that morning: whatever was breaking between us hadn't started with Marcus. It had started long before, in all the ways we'd slowly stopped showing up for each other. After Marcus left, I couldn't stop replaying his words in my mind. "You deserve more than this." What did he mean by that? Did he say it because he saw something in me, or was it just heat of the moment sympathy? I didn't know how to feel, or what I wanted, but the weight of those words sat heavy on my chest. I tried to focus on the day ahead, but my mind kept drifting. At lunch, I picked at my food. At work, I found myself staring blankly at the screen, typing the same sentence 3 times. Every little thing reminded me of the night before, his hand brushing mine, the way he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. And then, as if the universe wasn't finished testing me, Marcus texted. Just one line. You okay? I stared at the message, heart thudding. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? I didn't want to lie, but I didn't even know the truth myself. I deleted the reply 3 times before finally writing back, not really. His response came quickly. Can we talk? I didn't answer right away. Because what was there to say? That I was confused? That my marriage was quietly falling apart? That I was starting to feel seen by the one person I shouldn't? But I knew I would see him again. And not just because he was David's best friend. Something between us had shifted, something neither of us could undo. Whether it was right or wrong no longer seemed clear. All I knew was, I wasn't ready to forget it. And deep down, I didn't think he was either. What I didn't know then was that this story, my story, was only getting started. And the secrets still waiting to come out would be bigger than anything I could have imagined. Later that week, things started to unravel in small, almost invisible ways. David was home less and less, claiming late nights at work and unexpected meetings that didn't line up with anything on his calendar. I stopped asking questions, not because I trusted him, but because I already knew the answers wouldn't make me feel any better. I started to see our marriage for what it really was, 2 people sharing a space, going through the motions, holding on to something that had already slipped away. But what complicated everything was Marcus. After that night, we never spoke about what almost happened, not directly. But the silence between us said more than words ever could. He started checking in more, sending short messages during the day, asking how I was feeling, if I needed anything, if I wanted to meet for coffee just to talk. At first, I said no. I tried to keep my distance, to convince myself that I could handle it. But the truth was, I was drawn to him. Not just because he was kind or attentive, but because he noticed me in a way I hadn't been noticed in a long time. The first time we met again, it was supposed to be casual, just a quick lunch in a quiet spot outside the city. But the moment I saw him, everything I'd tried to suppress came rushing back. There was a look in his eyes, like he knew I was struggling to hold myself together. We talked for hours, mostly about nothing, but it felt like everything. I told him things I hadn't even said out loud to myself. And when I left, I realized I felt lighter, and more confused than ever. Meanwhile, David grew more secretive. One night, I noticed he left his phone on the kitchen counter and stepped outside to take a call. I glanced at the screen. A name I didn't recognize. A short message preview: last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to see more. The distance, the coldness, the late nights, it all made sense now. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to know if what I was feeling, what was happening with Marcus, was a reaction to a broken marriage, or something deeper. Something real. What none of us seemed to understand at the time was that we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't take back. And once the truth came out, nothing between the 3 of us would ever be the same again. Days passed like a storm gathering strength, each moment charged with a quiet tension I couldn't shake. I found myself walking on a razor's edge, caught between what I wanted and what I knew I shouldn't. The secret messages from Marcus kept coming, and though I tried to ignore them, my heart betrayed me every time my phone lit up. Meanwhile, David's behavior grew colder, more distant, like a shadow moving through the house rather than the man I married. One evening, David came home later than usual. The house was dark when I walked in, and the silence was louder than any argument. I noticed his coat draped over the chair, but he wasn't there. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. Can we meet? I need to see you. I hesitated, knowing it might change everything. But something inside me, the part that had been aching for connection and truth, said yes. We met in a quiet park, far from prying eyes. The air was thick with unspoken words. Marcus looked at me, eyes searching, as if trying to read the pieces of my broken heart. I wanted to ask him why he'd stayed when things started to fall apart between David and me. But instead, I stayed silent. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the confusion, the longing, pressed down on me. That night, when I got home, David was already there, waiting. The look in his eyes was different, tired, guarded, and somehow heavier than before. I wanted to confront him, to demand the truth, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, we stood there, two strangers tangled in a web of secrets neither of us could escape. I realized then that the biggest storm was still coming. The moment when all the lies, all the half-truths, and all the silence would crash down and force us to face what none of us wanted to admit. And as I lay awake that night, heart pounding, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Just when I thought the tension had reached its breaking point, something unexpected happened, something that turned everything upside down again. A few days after that silent, heavy night with David, I received a message from someone I never thought I'd hear from again, an old friend of Marcus's, someone I barely knew but who claimed to have important information about what was really going on between David and Marcus. I was hesitant at first. Why would this person reach out now? What could they possibly want? But curiosity, and maybe a little desperation, pushed me to meet them in a crowded cafe, somewhere public where I could leave if things felt wrong. When I sat down, they wasted no time. "You don't know the whole story," they said, eyes darting around nervously. "There's more to Marcus and David than you realize. Things you haven't been told." My heart sank. I thought I had already uncovered all the cracks in my marriage, the betrayals and lies. But now, it seemed like the ground beneath me was shifting again. This new twist wasn't just about infidelity or emotional distance. It was something deeper, something that connected Marcus and David in ways I never imagined, and that meant I was caught in the middle of a far more complicated situation than I had ever expected. I left that cafe with more questions than answers. My mind raced, wondering what this secret could be and how it would change everything. Could Marcus really be hiding something even David didn't know? Or was this just another layer of deception designed to keep me confused and off balance? As the days went by, the silence between David and me grew thicker. Marcus seemed more distant too, as if he was carrying a weight I wasn't allowed to see. I knew I was running out of time. The truth was coming, whether I was ready or not. And when it did, it would shatter the fragile balance we'd all been clinging to. I was trapped between two men who both held pieces of my heart, and secrets that could destroy us all. The night everything came to a head was nothing like I expected. I had arranged to meet David and Marcus together, for the first time since all the tension began. I needed answers, clarity, and maybe, in some small way, a chance to save what was left of my shattered marriage. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken accusations and raw emotions. David looked worn down, his usual confident mask slipping. Marcus seemed hesitant, almost burdened. David broke the silence first, admitting that the late-night calls and secretive behavior were tied to a business deal gone wrong, one he hadn't wanted to involve me in because he feared the stress it would cause. But then came the bigger truth. Marcus had been helping David through this crisis, staying late at the office, covering for him. The text I saw wasn't what I thought, it was from a business associate, not a lover. The weight of guilt, the distance between David and me, it all stemmed from the stress and fear of failure, not betrayal. I felt a mixture of relief and confusion. Marcus's presence in my life wasn't a secret affair, it was complicated friendship and loyalty in a moment of crisis. But the hardest part came next. Marcus confessed that he had developed feelings for me during that difficult time, feelings he never intended to act on. That night he carried me to bed wasn't about crossing a line, it was about care, about protecting someone he saw slipping away. We sat in silence, the truth settling over us like a heavy fog. I realized then how fragile trust had become, how easily assumptions could twist reality. But just as I thought the worst was behind us, my phone buzzed again, a new message, this time from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo of David and someone else, smiling in a way I hadn't seen before. The real story wasn't over yet. That photo shook me more than anything else. David smiling with someone I didn't recognize, someone close enough to him that the smile looked genuine, not forced. It was a reminder that even when we think we know the full story, there are always pieces left hidden beneath the surface. I confronted David the next day, and finally, he opened up about a friendship that had grown deeper than either of us realized. Someone who had supported him through the toughest moments, just like Marcus, but in a different way. What I learned through all of this is that relationships are messy, complicated, and rarely black and white. There were no villains or heroes here, just people struggling to hold on to what mattered, sometimes making mistakes along the way. David and I weren't perfect, and maybe we never would be. But the silence, the secrets, and the assumptions had been the real enemy. Marcus stepped back, understanding that what I needed most was space to heal and clarity on what I wanted moving forward. It wasn't easy, but it felt honest. David and I started to rebuild up slowly, with open conversations and a willingness to face the hard truths instead of hiding from them. Trust wasn't restored overnight, but for the first time in a long time, it felt possible. If there's one thing I want anyone watching to take away from my story, it's this: infidelity isn't always about betrayal in the way we expect. Sometimes, it's about loneliness, fear, and the ways we lose ourselves when communication breaks down. And sometimes, the hardest part isn't what happened between two people, it's finding the courage to face the truth and decide what you really want. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps you see that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance for light. 2.